He is, God, he has got so much damn potential.
He definitely does.
He's got so much potential.
But he comes back from every fight that he's had better, I mean, when one of the most impressive ones was he knocked out Klitschko. Oh my God.
Klitschko's seen better days though.
Change, another inconsistency in Anthony Joshua. I now understand, I believe having watched this, where Jake Paul is getting his confidence from. How he's built this narrative in his head that he genuinely has a chance. I think the thing to remember here, though, is that Anthony Joshua doesn't struggle against all smaller fighters.
Just maybe this might be his last fight, getting in there with Anthony Joshua and getting knocked out.
Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson break down the Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight, highlighting the differences between the two fighters. Tyson stresses that Joshua must control his punches because Jake is not on his level. Rogan calls Joshua one of the scariest men in boxing and points out the danger Paul faces going up against such a powerful opponent, especially since Paul has only fought exhibitions with retired or older fighters.
It's one of the craziest propositions of all time. You take a guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, and then you're going to fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists in the heavyweight division. Maybe we should watch the Francis Ngannou fight so you could see. Let's watch that real quick, just so you can see what Anthony Joshua is capable if he's fighting someone that's not in his league. Okay, look, Usyk beat him, and he beat him twice, and Andy Ruiz caught him in the first fight and dropped him and stopped him. It was spectacular. Andy Ruiz is super fucking talented. Usyk is perhaps the greatest.
The Wade Concept host explains that for Jake Paul, getting knocked out by a single punch from Anthony Joshua is far safer than taking repeated shots over 8 rounds. The logic is simple. Sustained punishment could cause serious injuries that last beyond the ring. Even though Joshua is using smaller 10-ounce gloves for this fight, a one-punch knockout, while dramatic, reduces long-term harm by preventing cumulative trauma. The host adds that this rule change shifts how people should view the fight. Despite the exhibition-style format, the danger for Paul remains real. The smaller gloves are meant to make the spectacle more exciting for viewers and media while keeping the fight controlled. But even with the reduced padding, the risk is significant. Joshua's power is well known, and the lighter gloves may increase the chance of a knockout. The technical change does not erase the huge difference in strength, skill, and experience between the fighters, meaning every punch still carries serious consequences.
Thing is, there really is only one outcome that can hurt Jake in this scenario, and that's that he gets viciously knocked out. Or he gets beat up really bad for 8 rounds and then viciously knocked out. I saw Nikisa talking on Ariel Helwani's show today about this, about like how it's not necessarily something they're worried about that Jake gets knocked out, because he's not afraid of the one-punch knockout as much as he's afraid of like Jake getting beat up for 8 rounds badly and it, causing some real cognitive damage. And there is science behind the fact that the more repeated head trauma is the more dangerous thing about pro boxing, because those gloves, you can get hit, you get 8 to 10 seconds to stand, and you can repeat it 2-3 times in the same fight, just absorbing punch after punch. So in the totality of Jake getting like knocked out cold, is that the worst thing possible for his health? I mean, who knows, dude? You could have a freaking brain aneurysm when you get hit off one shot from a guy like AJ. Again, knock on wood, you don't want to see any of that happen. If his career ends because AJ hurts him badly, then yes. But if it's a knockout where Jake is able to then continue fighting, people will still watch. It may not be as big as the AJ fight, but he still has an opportunity to make money in boxing. Again, the only way it wouldn't be the case is if Jake got like permanently injured from this fight, which is part of the reason that they take this fight, is because Jake doesn't really have anything to lose here outside of, again, the bodily harm. You fight a guy like Tommy Fury again, which I want to see, I think is more competitive, but doesn't bring the eyes that AJ does. So again, this is the entertainment business, and these Netflix fights are made for a massive audience. But you lose to Tommy Fury again, even by decision, that deflates Jake more than a knockout from Anthony Joshua. A loss to KSI deflates Jake more than a loss to Anthony Joshua. This is a perfect, even if Jake would have gotten just schooled by Gervonta Davis, it would have deflated him more than a knockout, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of risk, a lot of reward, but as far as your marketability, as long as you don't get...
Nikisa Badarian explains why Anthony Joshua was chosen as Jake Paul's opponent. Since the matchup is being documented for Netflix, the organizers needed a fight with maximum visual and narrative impact. They had to consider fighter profiles, media value, and audience expectations. Joshua checked every box. He is a globally recognized world champion, making the fight highly marketable. His presence raises the stakes and creates a storyline that appeals to viewers, sponsors, and promotional partners. Netflix's coverage only amplifies the drama inside and outside the ring.
And, Jake Paul being Jake Paul, he wanted to focus on the biggest, baddest names possible. That included Terrence Crawford. That included Ryan Garcia. That included Tommy Fury. That included Anthony Joshua. And we probably had, 30 or 40 names that we kind of reviewed. And I will say at least 12 or 13 names that agreed to do the fight. Some within the 2-week period, actually. But from a Netflix perspective, they were very keen on Joshua. They were interested on Crawford. They were interested in Ryan Garcia as potential opponents for Jake Paul. They were interested in Tommy Fury at some level as well. And the one that Jake gravitated towards was Anthony Joshua. Once it became clear Ryan couldn't do the fight as well. Ryan was also something that he was interested in doing. And the deal came together mostly because Jake mentioned this as of March of this year, right? That's the first time he was on a podcast and said, I think I can beat Anthony Joshua. Everyone laughed. At the time, Eddie Hearn said this is another, media attention-seeking moment for Jake Paul. I made it clear then to Eddie and to the media, Jake was serious and we wanted to do it in 2026. We had further conversations with Matchroom in July of this year with the understanding that if Jake got through Tank Davis, and even though that was an exhibition, it was very much structured to be a real fight in every way, shape, and form, then we would look to make Jake versus Joshua in 2026. So that gave us a head start in terms of trying to come to an agreement with Matchroom and AJ, and we were able to get it done.
I just want to ask about a couple of those names that you mentioned. Garcia's interesting because a day or so later, Oscar De La Hoya said, he's a DAZN fighter, this ain't happening, and of course we know there's no bigger DAZN name.
Ryan Garcia talks about how this fight could be life-changing for Jake Paul if he loses. He says Joshua's power should not be underestimated and that a defeat could affect Paul physically, mentally, and professionally. The experience could shape the rest of Paul's career, showing just how big the challenge is. Garcia emphasizes that Joshua's strength and skill make this a serious test, and the consequences of failure are very real. Preparation, awareness, and training are critical if Paul hopes to handle the danger Joshua brings.
I think that this has been a misstep from Jake. I think he wanted to make his partners at Netflix a little too happy, and he's gonna walk into it. But look he loses to AJ. Where does he go from here? Who does he fight? You gonna go back down to 135?
The problem is not that he loses to AJ. The problem is the way he's gonna lose to AJ might be life changing.
Right.
So that's the real issue.
It could be life changing in many ways, right? Physically.
Yeah.
See what he did in Nagano. It's like, but then again, if he gets knocked out, he gets knocked out.
Frank Martin points out that although the fight offers huge financial rewards, it is still an extremely difficult challenge for Jake Paul. Money does not eliminate the danger. Martin says Paul should have thought carefully before taking the bout because this is not just a cash grab. The stakes are high, and the physical challenge is huge. Paul is facing a powerful, seasoned boxer whose level cannot be matched by celebrity status or promotional hype. The payday is big, but so are the physical and reputational risks.
I consider Jake now, I wouldn't consider him like a YouTube fighter no more. I feel like he put in the time. He gotten better throughout all his fights. He done got better throughout all those fights, But it's still when you fighting fighters who actually done it for their whole life, it's a little different. If that fight happened, it'll be a good money fight. It'll be a good money fight. But that's a tough task for, Jake going to get that big ass heavyweight AJ. I know AJ personally, so that's a tough task.
Johnny Nelson comments that this fight could mark the end of Jake Paul's active boxing career if he gets knocked out. Paul has become a major source of income for top fighters like Joshua, often offering massive payouts to secure big-name matchups. Nelson notes that conspiracy theories have already started, suggesting Paul may not be able to take similar high-profile fights afterward because of the potential physical damage and public reaction. The bout is a turning point for Paul, both a financial opportunity and a personal risk that could reshape his entire career.